It's about time to call me to order.
Now we are.
Now we are.
Is this my seat?
Yep, anywhere you choose. I don't know where your name tag is, so
Oh, it's next to you, so.
I'll move my
you
junk.
guys need to switch.
Do we need to switch?
Oh,
Or
Are you right there?
I'm right next to
Okay, all right. Then it's 4 o'clock, and it's time to call the regular meeting of the Salina Heritage Commission Wednesday, April 27, 2016 to order. Items on the agenda, including the first three, are minutes of the November 12th, minutes of the January 27th, and minutes of the meeting of February 16th, all needing approval. I would entertain discussion or a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Judy, second by David, that the minutes of November 12th, January 27th, February 16th, and that would be November 12th, 2015, not 2005, be approved. All those in favor say aye.
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 And aye.
Motion passes. Item number 4. We, of course, have visited this a couple of times, but it's on our agenda to revisit. Consider request from Jewish American Society for Historical Preservation to the Heritage Commission and the City of Salina to support the establishment of an interpretive historical marker to honor August Bondy, a prominent figure in early Kansas history and the Salina community. And John, we'll turn that over to you to share with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. This is a request that you've heard previously for the Heritage Mission to support or help sponsor an interpretive historic marker for August Bondy, a prominent figure in early Kansas history. This request is from the Jewish American Society for Historic Preservation.
I thought we...
Mr. Klinger, the president of the Jewish American Society, initially contacted us on October 30th. We've been in contact with him and working with him to bring this item forward for the Heritage Mission in order to seek a recommendation and approval of a possible placement site for the marker. Bondy is noted for figuring prominently in the anti-slavery movement in territorial Kansas prior to the Civil War. He served as a Civil War soldier for the Union and served his country very well. Mr. Bondy did come originally from Vienna. His family emigrated in 1848 because of some religious persecution. They settled in St. Louis, Missouri. During that time, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was decreed that settlers could decide by vote whether Kansas would be a free state or a slave state. That came to a head on Election Day when some 5,000 heavily armed pro-slavery Missourians stormed into the territory and overwhelmed the polling places and captured the ballot boxes. During this time, August Bondy heard of Kansas' plight and joined that by coming to Kansas. He wasn't here long before he was confronted by the border ruffians from Missouri who burned down his cabin, stole his horses and cows, and trashed the trading post that he had. This outraged he and his associates, and they eventually joined radical abolitionist John Brown to fight the anti-slavery movement. He also served as a postmaster and laid out the original town of Walker, Kansas, which is currently Greeley, Kansas, and while at that place helped conduct an underground railroad for 3 years. He did come to Salina by way of Leavenworth and Lawrence, but coming into Salina in 1866, he's been identified with a lot of the business and public life of the town of that century, as well as the county, serving as a probate judge in Saline County from 1876 to 1878, as postmaster of Salina for 3 years, as well as serving a number of other public offices. He is noted for being a 32nd degree Mason with our local lodge and served as secretary. He remained a prominent figure in Salina until his death in 1907, having lived in Salina a total of 41 years. I'd like to go over our slides and just summarize some items. We have given the board just a listing of the interpretive markers in Salina, and some of these we've seen in a previous meeting, but this is Indian Rock Park. That particular marker was switched from a bronze after the bronze was lost, but that is a marker in one of our public parks. Just as another example, this is Dunbar Plaza along East Elm, and does commemorate the segregated school that stood in Salina prior to the Brown versus Board of Education case. This is very similar to what is proposed for Salina. As for other markers, we do have Founders Park down by the 4th Street Bridge, and we do have some samples provided by Mr. Klinger as well of other types of markers. These include one in Leavenworth, Kansas, commemorating the location of the Temple B'nai Jerusalem. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is the closest one that I could find as far as being towards Salina or the central region. Other examples include one from Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is another synagogue that was commemorated. These typically contain the text as well as a title. There are also emblems and figures on the plaques to help illustrate the particular resource. And this is one from Mobile, Alabama, similar to the other ones, having the first Jewish house of worship in Alabama commemoration, as well as some assorted plaques that are used in historic preservation purposes. Generally, these are on historic sites. The Kansas State Historical Society sponsors many of those across Kansas, as well as a couple down near Osawatomie and Paola that commemorate John Brown and his exploits. But these are, for the most part, cast aluminum with a powder coat text on those, and they serve us very well. These are actually just some various designs on that. In talking with Mr. Klinger, we discussed where a possible plaque would go. His suggestion was either a place of residence or a place of business for Mr. Bondi. And as you recall, we mentioned during our last meeting that Mr. Bondi did live with his wife in 2 locations during 1885 to 1905 at 412 South 5th Street. This area is now the Salina Surgical Center, as well as a residence at 441 South Santa Fe. This, in looking at our next slide, is the location for the Salina Surgical Center, as well as the rest of the Salina campuses, and also the parking garage. So both those are non-exempt at this point. Bondi's place of business was at 110 South Santa Fe, and during that period he was in that location. What exists on the property now is a 2-story brick building, the Trader State Bank, that appears to have been built there in 1910, so that particular building doesn't appear to be exact either. But while Mr. Bondi was postmaster, he was at the Federal Building at the corner of Iron and South 7th Street, and that particular structure was taken down in 1966 due to structural obsolescence. Just to go forward, it was done with a reddish brick in a Romanesque style. There was a later addition to the property, and then Mr. Bondi was postmaster there from 1895, I think, to 1899, as our report. We thought this would be a good location for a potential market for Mr. Bondi. We settled on 3 locations and discussed those at our last meeting. The first one being the Salina Masonic Center on South Santa Fe. In looking at that property, we noted that there was a degree of uncertainty on the ownership and continued course of that building. A second location was the location of the former Federal Building, which is actually a parking lot now for the United Building, as well as settling on the Smokey Museum, because they do have area off the sidewalk in the case of planners, and other locations that might be a good location for those. And these kind of illustrate the north facade of the museum. The entrance steps are here, but there are planners along the north facade of the building in 2 tiers, which could be a potential location for the plaque. and locate that off the sidewalk. Generally, when those are out on the sidewalk, they compete with traffic signals and are a little bit harder to recognize from the street. So this does appear to be one location, and this is an illustration of that location seen from the west. So we have discussed the location for the marker, the basic design on that. Usually vertical markers can add interest to the overall composition. Mr. Klinger says we are free to design our plaque as far as materials or colors and the basic things that would allow the plaque to fit in with either our wayfinding signs downtown or similar plaques. A lot of ours are presently bronze plaques, so there would be the option of going with either a bronze plaque, which is slightly more, or a vertical marker using a cast architectural product, which is a bit better way to display a plaque as a vertical marker instead of being on a building or on a base of some sort. So that we just discussed those. There are also several sizes depending on just the amount of information that will be presented. And just giving examples there. If the Jewish American Society funds the plaque, basically our only responsibility would be to find a location and to erect that. The Salina Parks Department would be responsible for the installation of the plaque and as any ongoing maintenance, and that's similar to the Dunbar School Plaza. The placement of the marker should ideally be where it's visually accessible and would not cover or dominate other features on nearby buildings or elements. We have put a great deal of information in the pack about Mr. Bondi's background and life. He was noted for keeping a journal through much of his life and wrote an extensive biography from 1901 to 1903 that he documented with the Kansas State Historical Society. His autobiographical papers are still existing at the State Society, and these provide a detailed look at the 10-year period, 1855 to 1864, that was critical in both Kansas and American history. Staff has brought some suggested findings in order to make a recommendation to the City Commission for moving ahead with this and choosing the Smoky Hill Museum potentially as a potential site. The first one was that August Bondi was an important historic figure who played a critical role in the heritage and cultural development of territorial Kansas. Mr. Bondi served as a public figure and significantly contributed to the development of Salina. He was a believer in human rights and justice, and his actions resisted the spread of slavery in territorial Kansas. The fourth being the establishment of the interpretive marker would be an appropriate way to honor and recognize Mr. Bondi. So in this case, it appears that the Heritage Commission would have the following options today. To approve the location of the historic marker for Mr. Bondi and the location at the Smoky Hill Museum as proposed. You could approve an alternate location after any discussion and approval by a majority of the Heritage Commission, or take no action at this time to place the historic marker there in case that project would be subject to an appeal to the City Commission if Mr. Klinger so chose. And through that, staff would recommend option number 1. So the reason we're meeting additionally today, since our January meeting, was to have a formal staff report to lay out all the information that we've discussed verbally until now, so we could present that recommendation to the City Commission following any action here.
John, tell me what you would need from our commission, because I think we've taken my opinion is we've taken 2 formal steps of action, maybe one in November, and that was to approve recognition of Mr. Bondi, and then I think a secondary action was taken formally by motion in January to approve the location to be the Smoky Hill Museum. So those 2, do we need to react on those 2 again? I'm not sure what we need to do to get it moved forward to the commission.
At this point, staff would be more comfortable if, after reading the report, you wanted to make a motion to affirm that earlier action. You could certainly do that. in those two parts being, one, the recommendation of a interpretive marker, and secondly, the location. That allows us to bring that over to the city commission as a concise document instead of maybe trying to combine those meetings. So that would probably be the best way to continue, is to have a formal motion to affirm those previous actions.
Then I think that's the step we'd want to take, in my opinion. So if someone will want to make a motion to reaffirm, I guess, action of number 12, approving recognition marker for August Bondi, as well as in addition to reapproving our January 27th action to place the marker at the Smoky Hill Museum.
Second.
You want to make the motion?
Well,
I just say what the motion
don't we
is.
just have to do option one and we're,
You want to just do option 1 and be done with it?
Yeah, I think we adopt the suggested findings in option 1 and
Okay.
Because it doesn't seem like any of the, of his original addresses would be particularly suited.
In this case, no, they would be on private property or within the street right away.
Even on the sidewalk on Santa Fe would be private?
It would also, the marker itself would probably be located on the sidewalk and in the street right away. But in that particular case, we recognize that a lot of the significance of that area has been removed,
Right.
and that may not be the best option.
Right. So it seems like the old post office is the best location. The old post office meaning the Smoky Hill Museum.
Yes, I assume.
All right.
So I think I have a motion to reaffirm previous action and to accept option 1 as presented by staff. And did I have a second? John made that motion. Is that correct? Do I have a second? Judy?
yeah, second, yeah.
Judy was second. Any discussion? Further discussion? All those in favor?
just as a clarification point we discussed before the meeting.
Right.
The Masonic orders have agreed to partner with Mr. Klinger on the cost of the sign. So, and they will include that information. He's a member of all the Masonic orders here in Salina. So they're
Is that
behind this
necessary?
project 100%. And that's just an added little bonus before we vote.
It is. And you mentioned to you that you found a copy of Mr. Bondi's autobiography?
That's correct. After his death, his children had published his notes or whatever as an autobiography, and it's published as a book. And I located a copy of that. It's on my desk at the office.
Where was the copy?
It's at the Masonic Temple.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty interesting.
He was the first secretary of Salina Lodge 60, one of the charter members of the lodge here. Then a year later, he joined the Yorkright Holy Royal Arch. Yeah, that's all far you go in Yorkright, because after that you have to be an avowed Christian. He was Jewish. Then in 1896, he became a Scottish Rite Mason, got the 32nd degree, and then they also joined the shrine that year. So,
He's quite an individual, really.
Yeah.
An interesting,
Very
interesting person.
Hmm.
That'll be good for the museum. More.
good for the
Fine.
city.
And John, we haven't taken action, I think. Did we take action? No, we didn't yet. But do you need any assistance? Now, the design of the sign, John Reynolds has said that they're working with the Masonic
Yes.
people to support it. Do you need some recommendation on the type of sign then from us as well after this action?
You certainly could if you believe that the vertical interpretive sign in aluminum cast is preferable. What staff has done is it's gone over the Jewish American site and looked at other states and locations, and by far that type of casting is the most used.
Cast aluminum?
Yes.
Just not like there's the one at Indian Rock Park. I'm not happy on that sign at all.
Mhm.
Two
Yes.
posts. and a piece of
Then my
cardboard.
discussion with Mr. Klinger, it's going to take 12, 13 weeks to get this thing made. And
Figure out what's going to say. and-
yeah, so we're looking after Labor Day before we can establish it.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't hear John, he may have addressed this. The Jewish organization designs it and writes up everything and decides on whether to put a photo or, a bust of or something else. Is that right?
Yes, they would allow Salina to identify the type of sign and the layout and possibly the finishes of those so that it would match historic markers already existing in Salina. There aren't a lot of these particular types here, But what the staff did is just kind of analyze the various locations and other communities and jurisdictions, and we would probably work out the fine points with Mr. Klinger on having some type of vertical marker. The one on the screen is pretty indicative of that. Certainly, there's a crest here that could be a bust of Mr. Bondi, the Star of David, and possibly the emblem for the Masonic Lodge as well. Those would be very worthy additions to that, and they add to the plaque. Generally, the bottom line is where the credits would go, and that would be the Salina Heritage Mission and the City of Salina, possibly.
I would note the photograph that they have is the one that's in their materials here.
I have not seen that first one, that first picture of him.
Much younger.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a nice one. I've seen him as a soldier. There's a picture of him as a soldier, but this one is nice, I think.
I have a question on the, first of all, I like the vertical markers and I like the cast something. I have a question, as aluminum as opposed to bronze, just a cost factor, or is one preferred over the other?
On bronze markers, because there is a great differential in weight, then they're usually either attached to a wall or to a built-up base or monument stone. That's where you generally see those. And certainly one could be done, but it may have larger supports as well. And that's something staff could look into, but that's generally been the determining factor is the weight aspect.
Okay, and aluminum's perfectly appropriate. I think it's attractive and okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. With that, John, and I did want to make a mention, I assume that the city will have, and the Historical Museum will have an option to review the text of the sign prior to the sign being prepared?
They certainly would. They would have draft copies. In the case of the Dunbar School Plaza, they had Richard Bergen do the design on that, and there were drafts distributed to the city as well as the Dunbar Alumni Association. In this case, the museum would be one of the contacts, as well as this particular board and the city staff in concert with the city commission. So there'll be several bodies looking at that and then providing comments back and forth. But I think since we have a prototype fairly well, there'll be just a matter of the text and
Right.
symbols. So.
Okay, just as a double check. Hard to change a misspelled word after the sign's cast.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Then moving to the next item, which would be item number 5, I'm sorry. Update.
We got a
Now I'm
five.
messing up. Update on initiating a recognition awards program for recent historical preservation projects in the community. This was mentioned at our last meeting and possibly the meeting before that,
Yes.
but it was mentioned, David brought that up, and I think we all agreed that you would bring back to us some maybe recommendation of how we might proceed with this.
Thank you, board members. What we plan to do is to at least go over the type of award program we would like to find assistance with. We can certainly come up with candidates. The Heritage Mission did have preservation awards between 2003 and 2007, when there was a lot of building and renewal going on in Salina, less after the economic downturn. But there are candidates today that we would certainly bring to you. We were also looking at a thematic way of linking those together. There are 2 sites in the downtown right now, possibly 3 that are shaping up. The former Hilton Inn has been renovated over into the Assurance Partners building. That's not a historic preservation program as far as we're concerned, but it was a renewal. Another is Brian Richardson's renovation of the town site building. What he's done there is replace the storefront and awnings on that, but the rest of it was maintained as it was originally. He tried to match the previous tile that was existing on the structure when it was first built, as well as doing some restorative aspects on the building itself just to clean it up. So everything on the lower floor was previously altered, so he didn't have a base to go back to, but he did renew that building and is a potential candidate, as well as a building that he did down at 128 South Santa Fe, the old Crest building. He did do some renewal on that. We have projects going on that right now. There is a small former hotel that was turned into part of a creamery on the corner of 4th Street and Walnut. That is coming along. What is happening with that is the building itself is being refurbished for offices of the United Way, and then apartments on the upper floor. There will be some renewal also on the other buildings that were part of that original creamery to restore those 2 apartments. That project is ongoing, so it may not come about rapidly. But there are other opportunities in the downtown, we believe. We didn't bring a list forward to you, but we did note at our last meeting, we talked about the Sears houses that are in Salina, and we meant to address maybe some of those at this meeting. But what we wanted to do is get your feedback. I know Dr. Silverman mentioned that he'd like to involve owners of historic properties either in the districts or outlying those areas, and potentially come up with a way of recognizing them at the local level or through this board. I think that has worth, because that area is a real gem in Salina, and we like to see that keep improving as we see the Kansas Wesleyan campus improve. I think that area in general will come into its own. So at this point, we could address the Sears building or start a discussion among Heritage Commissioners on how to go about contacting homeowners in that particular district that basically is from the 600 block of South Santa Fe, the 600 block of Highland, and going south from there. Our historic districts go down to the 900 block, but don't include the 900 block. But there is a house being restored there at 937 South Santa Fe. It was an old Charles Shaver Tudor house that's being renovated, and I think those also are part of that overall district, and historic district boundary shouldn't matter.
Right.
So
That's commonly known as the Errol Flynn house, even though that was his widow, it was her parents' house. I can't think of her name right offhand.
is it a Jane Wymore or?
Possibly.
Mm.
I think it's the Wymore house, but yeah.
So David, I think you brought this up
Yes.
as a concept. Share with us what your thoughts were on that.
Well-
how it might work in your opinion, then we can maybe weigh in a little bit.
Well, this was something that we did in Columbia, Missouri, on the commission there. We had 10 homes every year, but we had a much bigger historic property list to select from. And typically, we would try and honor one of the university buildings, other structures in the downtown area, private homes that people had been restoring or had maintained in a historic manner. I think we could do a top 5. Also on the list, I think, would be the Marymount campus, the renovation work there that's going to preserve that building, even though they're private apartments.
It's a very worthy site. It's a local landmark.
Yes.
In Salina, and one of the most prominent properties around.
Yes.
And a number of the condominiums are done with more in progress at this point, so it really is looking attractive.
Right. But the building, the outer structure itself is going to, however modern it is on the inside, the structure itself will be saved, so, as it is. So possibly that could be on the list.
In Columbia, did you all pick like the top 10
Yes.
of the various ones that have been done? Maybe there's 20 done.
Been done or
You
were being
selected
done. We
10
also we try to also select a property that was worthy of recognition to maybe help get people to protect it or save it. So if there's a property like that in town, we could honor it as a historic structure, even if it's not in a historic district, but that recognize that this might be worthy of recognition. So, yeah.
Well, you know, I drove down Highland last night, and then,
Yeah.
of course, driving down Santa Fe. There's several of those homes, I don't know how recently, but several of them really taking a great deal of care in
Mhm.
bringing them back to original.
Right.
That's certainly worthy of recognition. And
Yeah.
I mentioned the Sears homes, and I see John brought some, so I think they're not always grand. They were more middle income type homes,
Mhm.
and yet they have kind of a historical significance. So, I think we need to lay something out and figure out a way to
Right.
bring recognition before this board, maybe once a year for those people who have
Right.
done that type of thing.
Right.
It maybe should be commercial, some commercial and
Mhm.
some residential.
Absolutely.
I think, rather than,
Right.
gives both recognition.
Oh, absolutely. So, and maybe, provide for like a yard sign of some kind that recognizes it, and maybe
Little
have,
article in the newspaper would be nice.
we could have a little cake and juice and
Mhm.
make a little party. So,
Is that sort of what you did before, John?
Yes. What we've done in the past is have a presentation here at our regular meeting for preservation awards. That's fairly formal. I think the induction part or the attraction part would be a lot of the work, and that's just the finale on that, is presenting them with plaques and congratulating them at a formal meeting. So
right.
the help with identifying those projects would be particularly valuable to staff.
And a before and after picture would be pretty neat to
That
have
would be
too,
good,
like
yes.
the house flipping on TV, you see the
Mhm.
before and after, and it's
Right.
quite
Right.
impressive sometimes. So, what do we need to move forward?
You could direct staff to do some additional work as far as organizing that. Certainly we can do some photography or walking the districts. We would appreciate, any suggestions you might have if you want to take in those neighborhoods and note particular examples that we could perhaps contact. At some point, we might want to look at getting a committee together to do some one-on-one with property owners.
Mhm.
That would be valuable for us to do.
So I think we also probably need to create a short list of properties for the first round that we could choose from.
Do we need a published criteria to make the judgments about?
Yeah, I think we need a little, in my opinion, we need a little document that says, first of all, who will recognize,
Mhm.
whether it's maybe 2 commercial, 3 residential, or 2 and 2, or 3 and 3, or it doesn't matter, but whatever you
Mhm.
say. And then the criteria from which we look at them, and then the list of properties that are being considered, and then the winners.
Yeah.
Just kind of a little, it doesn't need to be anything really complicated, but just a little
Mhm.
summary of kind of our process,
Yes.
so we use it every time.
Mhm.
Is that something you could put together for us? And
Yes, I think staff can. We've done this on that basis before, and with that information and suggestion, I think we can form up something for you.
send that, and maybe you could put that in our next packet. They'd give us that meeting to review it and see if we're all in
Mhm.
agreement with it, or any little changes we want to tweak it a little, we could,
Yeah.
and then approve it. How would that be?
That sounds great.
That work for you?
Yes, staff can follow that instruction.
Okay. And in the meantime, as we're out and about, there would be nothing wrong with sending to John a note saying, I saw this property, whether it's recent or not, we don't always know, but I'd like it to be put on at least the short list to be considered, and we could have that going in advance. Would that work?
It would. Part of what the Heritage Mission does is education of the general public on the attributes of historic preservation, so this type of a recognition would fall right in with that.
Well, then, I don't know, we need a motion. If everybody's, let's have consensus, we're in agreement to proceed that way, we'll. Okay, all right,
Sure.
good enough.
Okay.
Thanks, John. We'll look forward to getting something back to us, if you
Okay.
will.
Second number 4.
That'd be fun. Other matters?
At this point, we do have one project that may come back for you. There is efforts in downtown to organize an area for a hotel, as is roughly on the corner of Mulberry and Santa Fe. And in the course of that, there is a conservation property that might be removed in order to place a parking lot that would service that hotel building. That's being formed up this time. But we will receive an application shortly to remove a property that's on the corner of 5th Street and Mulberry. It's a reddish brick building that is sort of to the east of the USD 305 garage that was there. So it's on the opposite side of the street, and a reddish brick building there. Had been
A home that's there?
Yeah, a home, and been in apartments lately. It did have a fire in it in 2009, so it's been occupied intermittently since then, but it is in the general area where that might be a parking lot to serve the hotel. So
Where would the hotel be?
if you can imagine, it would go from the Professional Hearing Center up towards First Bank, Kansas. On the 5th Street side, it would go up from the USD 305 garage and include the two-story apartment, the brick apartments that are on 5th Street, just before you get to the parking lots there.
Oh.
Yeah. And so that would be the borders of the hotel itself, and then the parking would be surface parking, and in that case, would be across 5th Street to the east, and require the removal of several homes and a taxi garage that is located along Mulberry. So,
You know, that particular location would be a real benefit for the regional medical center concept too. You know, having a hotel next to a hospital is hugely important at times.
it certainly would be, and it's with their support as well.
Yeah.
Is staff able to say who's building this hotel, or how many rooms, or do you have any of that?
Unless it comes out in the newspaper, then we're never certain.
I
so,
see.
so it is proposed at this point. And in preparation for that, we need to do some approvals to get ready for the project should it occur.
Right.
Yeah.
And think that that's walking distance to downtown and walking distance to the convention center and so
But not-
bicentennial center. So that's really could be helpful to the downtown area.
Good.
Okay, that could come to us in the future, right?
It will be, yes. It should be coming within at least the next quarter.
Okay, all right.
Very good.
That's exciting. Any other items?
That concludes what staff has brought forward for you today.
With that, I would go to, I think, number 5 on the agenda, which is the meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
I like that one.
Okay.
Good to see everybody
Thank
again.
you all. One second.